computer. All right, so we're live, and welcome, Thessa Sophia. I'm looking forward to talking to you about meditation, stillness, and meditation as a woman. So first of all, would you introduce yourself so anyone who watches this knows a little bit about who you are and where you're coming from?
Yeah, thanks. Well, first of all, just to make it clear, my first name is pronounced Thessa.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have said that before. It's not, people get it wrong all the time because it's spelled like Thessa, so. And thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. I was saying before we started recording that we've been Facebook friends, and this is our first chance actually getting to talk, so I'm happy about that. Thank you. A little bit about me. I started out as a healer, and it's kind of, my whole life has been two paths, healing and awakening, and they converged at a certain point. So along the healing route, I learned, I became a nutritionist, I became an herbalist, I used a therapy called NAET to help get rid of tolerances and allergies. And then I was trained as a shamanic healer, and we used regression therapy, and we healed at the cellular level, and we would do a lot of research in groups. So we would have people that we would work with, and the whole group would essentially experiment on this person with their permission, experiment. Okay, if we go and heal this at the cellular level, does the person have a change in their multiple sclerosis or their schizophrenia or whatever we were working with?
Well, pretty big stuff.
Yeah, it was exciting. I was in Scotland when I was doing this part of the gig, the journey. And that was really fun for me. And it gave me a lot of the skills that I use still today, as far as in my healing practice, which is focused on embodiment and the somatic experience. So physical sensations, emotion, thought even, and then experiencing thought somatically. So that was a very brief summary of that line. And then the other line was more personal because I was meditating. So I started meditating about 20 years ago, and I learned Kriya Yoga and went on pilgrimages and retreats and all kinds of different...
That's what your practice was, Thessa. Did you have a particular meditation practice at the time?
I kind of tried various things. I started with Kriya Yoga because I read Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, and I was like, yes, I'm on that train. So I learned Kriya Yoga, but then, I don't know, I was 25 or something at the time. And when I started doing it, I thought, well, this is not what I read about. But I kept doing it. I was a committed practitioner, but then I would change. I would change different approaches. And for a while I was just sitting and watching, trying to quiet my mind, the classic thing. Yeah. What else did I do? And then I started getting involved in things like Robert Monroe and the Monroe Institute, and he uses HemiSync.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, HemiSync is... Robert Monroe was a sound guy. He was a sound technician, a sound engineer, actually. And he found that you could use sound to change your states of consciousness.
Okay.
So he developed this system of, okay, if you put these two sounds together, one in one ear and the other ear, like one sound here and another sound here going at different rates, the brain combines them and then puts you into a particular state of consciousness, which happens to correspond to traveling inside of yourself as well. So I did that for a couple of years. Yeah, I did a lot of different things, and then I would say that when my when I started the shamanic healing practice, the two of them started to come together, so that my healing practice and my meditation were more and more one and the same. And in fact, the main reason that I left my teacher at that time was because he was very focused on fixing a problem, fixing something that was wrong with the person, like disease or a mental pattern or emotional stuckness, whatever.
Right.
And it occurred to me, I had this big revelation. The search for healing is the search for the true self. And that's actually where we need to go, So that's when the healing and the awakening kind of came together. And when I presented that to him, he said, I don't remember what he said, but it was something like, what? You're crazy. That's not the thing, So based on his response, I thought, this is so alive for me. I can't actually work with this group anymore. And then I left. And from that point on, it's been my inner experience that has been the main guide. And the unraveling and the unfolding is definitely, there's something happening inside of me that is just continually unraveling that. And so that's how I work with people now, to kind of stimulate them and their process to unravel for themselves in ways that are clearer and have greater clarity and purpose.
Wow. So that raises many questions, and one that just want to ask, because I know this will probably be of interest to anyone who watches this, is, was this for you, like going into the healing, something about you searching for your own healing at the time, or was it just a calling that you felt?
It was both. I had this sense of wanting to heal myself, but then working with other people, part of my purpose has been, what is the cause of whatever a person's working with? And because I'm very detailed, I like to get technical. I'm kind of like a technical geek around these things, So I wanted to know, for example, after working with trauma for so long and trauma healing, at first the question was, what is the cause of this person's trauma? And for me, I had a childhood that I was working with, for example, and I had relationships that I was really focused on. I've always really been focused on relationships and using them as reflection back to my healing process, So that was the fodder that I used for myself, but it was really more about, I need to know how things work. I want to know what the cause of things are. So at first the question was, okay, what's the cause of this? When my partner gets angry with me, I shut down, for example. So what is the experience of shutdown, and where did that first originate in my own psyche? Because it didn't start with him, right? It started before that. Mm-hmm. And then, so after asking that question for a while, then it became, well, why do we ever create trauma in the first place? Mm-hmm. What is that? How come someone can yell at me and I can shut down, but someone can yell at someone else and they don't shut down? Like, why? Why do I choose to shut down in that situation and someone else doesn't? So, it's always been this driving thing for me, is wanting to know what the cause of trauma, and then that moved into, okay, well, we're not actually screwed up, right? There's lots of things about us that are just natural expression. I want to know the cause of that too.
Yeah. So this is so pertinent, like personally, obviously, and also for everyone that I know that I work with as well. Like, trauma is such a big thing that comes up in any women's group. It's a big deal. It's very common. Probably, some people say everyone's got some kind of trauma, so I guess you could just extrapolate it out, but just specifically, I guess, dealing, what comes up a lot in my work is sexual abuse, for example.
Yeah.
And personally, like, I was in a relationship I would describe as abusive not that long ago, 2 years ago. So still quite fresh, really. So it's in me and it's in those I work with. And so I wonder what you found when you went searching into the root of trauma.
Yeah. Good question. Well, after, when I was exploring the cause, things got really complicated because I started to travel. Traveling within myself was. Are you still there? You're frozen.
Yeah, your face is frozen, but I can still hear you.
Oh, okay. Should I keep talking?
Yes.
Oh, here we go. We're unfrozen. Okay, so traveling within myself was equal to traveling in the cosmos, so the further you go into yourself, the more that you're actually exploring various levels of the earth, the planets, the sun, through the sun, the galactic center, through the things got really complicated. And so I would visit various levels of complexity, and then there would be a simplification. Well, the final simplification was so sweet and so easy. And it was that whatever experience I'm having, so my focus is somatic based, right? It's really the body, right? Because we want to embody all aspects of ourselves. And to me, that's like the highlight of the final point of the spiritual practice.
Yeah, that's music to my ears.
Yeah. Yeah, right? It seems like a new thing. I don't know. Everyone else is talking about you are not your body. But anyway. So anyway, the simple thing was, okay, what seems to really work is acceptance, allowance, and surrender. That is like the key thing that I started with, that I always was coming back to. And even just that, allowing ourselves to feel what's happening in the body. My breath is tight. I have a pain in my belly. I'm feeling anxious. Whatever it is, there's fear, letting it be there. Really letting it be there to the point where we're listening so deeply, it's starting to unravel itself as to what the nature of it actually is, So the physical sensations, any emotion that arises, the thoughts, the first thing is letting all the activity be there and be what it is, and without trying to change it, or noticing that we're trying to change it and letting that be there too.
Yeah.
And then sometimes there's judgment. That's fine. You let the judgment be there too. It's really this accepting and allowing is a constant practice that I notice people get greater and greater insight into what it actually is the longer they work with it. Mm-hmm. So that's one element. And when you're feeling all of the activity, it becomes very clear then, oh, there's something that's in contrast to all of this activity. As Sia's coming up the stairs. Bye, beeps. There's something that's in contrast to all this activity. Because I'm so aware of the activity and I've put my awareness here, it becomes, oh, there's something that's still. So when what is still and what is active are separate in our experience, because I began to realize, oh, there's all this activity here. I got the thoughts, I got the emotions, and then where is the stillness? Oftentimes it's behind me. It can be anywhere. It can be in different parts of your body. It can be way out in the next galaxy. It can be anywhere. But the basic thing is that the contrast is what we're looking for. And the more I started to realize, wow, there's this stillness. What if I just feel into the qualities of the stillness too, and keep accepting and allowing? That nature taking its course brings them together. Mm-hmm. And when the two of them are brought together, the final product is not most of the time, it's not like sitting in a cave doing nothing, being out of body, basically.
Yeah.
It changes the quality of the embodiment and brings in more and more expression and embodiment of the true nature of our own uniqueness, or grace. It brings a quality of grace and harmony and natural flow, magic, the Tao. That's what the Tao is to me, when those two come together. So the simplicity is that, feeling the activity, feeling the stillness together, and then allowing them in acceptance and allowance to do what they're just going to do naturally according to nature, which is come together.
I get that. And yeah, I get that. I get the power of that. And again, yeah, just, gosh, so many things bubbling up out of that, which is that I actually feel that I've only just been able to get personally to the point of being able to do that quite recently, after so many years of like doing all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then even just recently thinking of an example where there was pain in my heart, and it was pain in my heart over a guy, and about longing and desire and unrequited love and those kinds of emotions, and it felt painful. And then I just sat with it. Instead of distracting myself, I did sit down and just had my hands here and just felt the feeling and breathed with it, and kept going, kind of this sense of going into the feeling rather than escaping from the feeling. And then all of a sudden there was this big like crying and sobbing and releasing that happened, that I had no expectation it was going to happen, but it just happened. And then this heart opening happened after that, or just in that. And it blew me away, actually. And I feel now it could have gone more, but for me, that was kind of where I sort of stopped it. But that kind of thing. So my question is, for somebody new to this, would you need somebody like yourself to be there to ask the question? Because I certainly know I can get lost in and I have in the past gotten very lost in the embodied experience of the pain and the thoughts, and like, it might not have been the awareness to say, where's the stillness?
I would say it can be helpful. It depends on each person. It can be helpful, but what I'm sharing is so simple that I have people who've been following me on Facebook for a year and a half, and then they call me and go, they call me, like I had this one woman, she called me for a session. She's been following me on Facebook for a year and a half. She's basically just does what I do, and all she needed was a look into a particular thing, so it depends on the person. I mean, some people need to have that reorientation, and some people can just read my posts and kind of get what's happening, or tune into stillness on their own. And usually when you're first accessing stillness, sometimes it can be really available, and then sometimes it feels completely inaccessible. And that's normal.
Yeah.
That's normal. But the more that you just work with acceptance, allowance, and surrender of what is, the more the stillness becomes available. And you can notice it. You don't have to do it in sitting practice only. Sitting practice helps because you're just focusing on that. But you can be talking on the phone, or making dinner, or having a deep conversation with your lover, and still have an awareness of where stillness is in relationship to what you're saying, or to how your body is moving, or chopping the vegetables,
I love hearing that. I
Yeah.
love hearing that because, again, personally, I'm so passionate about bringing everything into life and into the body and not transcending it and going away from it.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that's, I guess, my passion, my path as well. But also because I work so much with women and, you know, busy mums, housewives, careers, juggling all these different things. And it's like,
Yeah.
how do I bring meditation into that? How do I bring stillness into that? How do I integrate the stillness?
Yeah. So there's phases of that. And the sitting meditation is important for going into the things that we're not able to see until we really relax into it. But then once you get it, see, a lot of people, they go into meditation and they have these amazing insights, right? Sitting meditation, your mind is blown, but then when they get up out of the chair, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to find this balance. I could go into sitting meditation and do the transcendence and gain what it is that I need to gain from the transcendence. But then I need to feel that insight and that state of being as I'm chopping the vegetables so
Yeah.
that that they can merge. And something you said is actually really important, because it brings in the next layer. You said, sometimes I forget and I go into the sensations and just get lost in like this activity and that, this experience, that phenomenon.
Yeah.
And I thought that's really common for women. Like that's definitely something that women come back to and look at. And what it points to is when the stillness and the activity come together, the main question is, what is it that's keeping them apart, right? And when you zoom in to that question, at first it looks like the answer is different all the time. Oh, what's keeping them apart is I don't want to talk to that guy, or I can't be bothered, or I'm tired, but then you realize eventually the only thing ever keeping them apart is an experience of me, like what feels like me. So then when you start to feel me together with the stillness, it begins to transform.
Okay.
And what that does is loosen identification. So when we get lost in the moving thing, it's because we're identifying with all the moving stuff.
Yeah.
And that changes over time with meditation.
Yeah. Again, that makes total sense from my own experience.
It's a process and it's fine,
Yeah.
that it takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just it's so wonderful to hear it. It's so wonderful to hear
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, then I can laugh at myself, and I think it's, I don't know, for me, it's like so important for me to be real in who I am. And it's like, I can easily get lost in a drama, in a story still, for a day or two. And I'll be like, really lost in the whole thing. And why
Yeah.
this thing is happening. And then a few days
Yeah.
later, I'm like, oh my God, that was crazy.
Yeah, well, at least I remember the times when I wasn't even having the realization that it was crazy. I would stay in it and stay in it and stay in it. And it took me quite a bit of practice before I reached that point of allowing myself to be in it for a few days and then realizing, oh, wow, what was that? So that's progress.
Yeah. So, wow. So because you did speak about the value of the sitting stillness. And because I talk mostly to women, although I hope men will watch this too, because what you're saying is for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see value in maintaining a sort of traditional stillness sitting practice, or is your approach about that integration?
Yeah. So it's taken me a long time to work out the quality of what's coming through me and what it's related to as far as traditional spiritual practice, because I'm feeling I don't have a teacher, I don't have a particular teacher that's telling me how to do things. It's all coming through me. And the closest thing I can relate it to is Tantra.
Yeah.
And the reason is because when we're in sitting practice and we're moving, so if you think of the activity and the stillness as separate, which is how we first experience it when we're doing this practice, right?
Yeah.
There's like the field of the activity and there's the field of the stillness.
Yeah.
And then there's the one exploring them. There's the one going into the activity and the one going into the stillness, right? Well, in order for them to merge, there has to be a process of this one visiting the other, one, the other, one, the other. And that's how they eventually merge. The visiting of the stillness in sitting meditation is the cultivation of the masculine.
Mm-hmm.
The visiting of the field of activity is the cultivation of the feminine. Mm-hmm. And as we're visiting, the one visiting is clarifying itself. It's getting more and more connected to its own source. So this is how our masculine becomes the divine masculine and the feminine becomes the divine feminine through the constant visitation of each field and then letting go of the one visiting so that we can become unified with each part. And this happens in phases. So that's why we experience it as a process. So the sitting meditation is the aspect of ourselves visiting the stillness more and more.
Yeah.
But then when you're in sitting meditation, you can still visit the field of activity, right? So you're able to do both in sitting meditation. It's just that you can access deeper levels of the stillness in sitting meditation. So let's say I'm working with a particular issue. It's any issue. It's the same for everything I explore, right? So I'm working with a particular issue. I sit down in sitting meditation. I feel the stillness and I feel the activity. I go deep into the stillness. I come back and bring whatever it was into the activity. And I'm still in sitting meditation.
Can I just ask, just to clarify, when you're saying activity in that point, in that moment, do you mean like feelings, sensations, emotions, thoughts?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Anything that's moving.
Yeah.
Energy, movement, a mood, anything that's moving, that's not still.
Yeah.
So as they come together more and more, you'll find in your sitting practice, there's this state of being, it's this state of beauty and coherence that comes up as they come in, right? But you're sitting, you're not doing anything. Yeah. So the next thing is to feel that state of being and start moving. You can still do that in practice. Like even if you just start moving your finger, that you're introducing movement, and then the embodiment of that state of unification that you've achieved of the masculine and the feminine, of the stillness and the activity.
Right. Yeah.
You're bringing that into movement. Right. And then you can you can go as far as ecstatic dance with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's Tantra. And I guess you can come the other way, because I think I sometimes go the other way. So I go from the extreme movement into the stillness. So rather than going from
absolutely.
I often start, that's kind of just my way, I guess, because I have to kind of go,
yeah.
Then it kind of takes me quite quickly into
yeah.
It's interesting because I have seen this difference, and it always kind of starts from here, having sort of been much more devoted this last year to a really active sitting practice, and I've seen the shift in my own being, in that sense of being in flow more, and recovering from blips more quickly.
Yeah.
And then also just a reflection in, I'm just beginning to look up and out now after my previous relationship, but like seeing a whole other kind of man sort of in my sphere than was there previously. It's really interesting to witness that. And it's like, oh, wow, that meditation's doing something.
Yeah, I love that. Isn't that amazing when something changes in yourself and then it's reflected back to you in the environment?
Yeah. Oh, that's, yeah, kind of gone into stillness now.
Yeah, I think your point is a good one. They're actually the same thing. In the end, that's what we come to, is that they're the same thing. But so whether you start in stillness or you start in the movement or the activity and you end up in one or the other, they're both eventually seen as the same thing.
Yeah. So would you, in that, in the framework of how you understand things, even talk about a moving meditation, or would that phraseology not make sense then?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm doing retreats, we're bringing movement in.
Okay.
So there are points when, for example, when we're working with healing a particular organ in the body, we'll sit and become the organ, so you can let the whole organ be your whole body. Yeah. And then you can listen very deeply to the activity in the organ. You know, is there pain somewhere? Is there tingling, movement of energy? You know, what thoughts come up when you are that organ? What emotions are there as you are that organ? And then feel the stillness and go through the process of allowing them to come together. And at any point, you can bring movement in. So I like to get a taste of some unification before I bring movement in, because it's kind of adding the next level of complexity.
Right.
But let's say you're starting to feel, oh, I'm my liver, and now my liver is feeling blissful, and I can tell that they're unified, right? Now I go, well, how does my liver want to move? And I start to do whatever. I just let myself do whatever as the liver. And what that does is it brings corrective movement into the physiology for the liver. So the way that the liver is going to correct its own function is partly through stillness, but it needs to move differently, right? In order to let go of bile and emotion. And so that movement, however, I feel like movement is actually bringing in the healing into that particular level of organ that I'm working with.
Love this.
Yeah, me too. It's pretty exciting.
I feel like I want to fly over to Asheville now.
Come on. Yeah. It's raining, but it's not snowing.
It just all makes so much sense, you know? It makes so much sense.
Well, you know why? You know why it makes sense? It's because when you sit in acceptance and allowance, the universe reveals itself to you. And there's really nothing else to do. So I'm just telling you what I've learned from sitting so long with people in acceptance and allowance. I'm saying sitting, but moving in the world in acceptance and allowance. And the universe just goes, this is how I work, and this is what I am. And if you just let yourself go, you can align with me and we can move together.
I really feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that touches me. That touches my heart, because it feels really true. And it's like this truth that's been unfolding for a little while, and you're just speaking that truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really funny also, because you've suddenly gone more into focus, even though I'm long-sighted. You just went into focus then.
Yeah, the outer world reflecting back again.
So, gosh, I almost feel like there's nothing more to say or ask at this point, but
Mm-hmm.
that's what it feels like. There was one thing I wanted to ask you, even though I feel that we've covered it in a
Mm-hmm.
way, but I just want to put the question and see what you say. Is Yeah, have you in your, what? Do women need a different approach to stillness, or is it basically the same approach for everyone? I guess that's the question that I have.
Mm-hmm. Um, what I notice is that when I'm working with men and women, it's the same process, but there are different things that tend to come up with women versus men. And it's all related to what we're identifying with, which means, what do I feel like is me?
Right.
So each of us needs to visit that in our process. And there is plenty of opportunity to do that, because the unification doesn't fully happen until we do. But one of the things that women tend to get hung up on is being identified with all of the things that are happening, and the movement and the expression of that movement, you know? So it's not that the expression and the femininity goes away with the practice. It becomes clarified and refined and more graceful, and with no suffering, eventually, with less suffering and then no suffering.
Well, that would be nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like, you know, what I do is really the water path. It's a very feminine approach, even though we're sitting and we're feeling stillness. It's Osho is one of my favorite teachers, and he says this, you know, the only path is the feminine path. And it's true, because of that. The water path, the feminine path, the just letting go, letting things be, will show you what you actually are. So in that way, it's really designed for women. Like, women really like what I do because of that. And also men then get to learn what it's like to let go and surrender. And if they're really identified with the masculine, they still get to visit that aspect of themselves with the stillness by going deep and deep into the stillness. But then they get a chance to recognize how that is related to the movement and then the feminine. Yeah.
And of course, you are a mother and
Yeah.
in a relationship yourself. So, you know, you are embodying the feminine in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate what you said before, which is we need to make it practical. And I really enjoy doing that. I really enjoy watching what happens between me and my partner, and then reflecting back to myself and seeing, oh, is there any separation here in my experience in relationship to this conversation right now, or whatever, you know, or right now we're weaning. Geez, I'm trying to night wean Sia. So night before last, she was up every hour screaming, you know, at the top of her lungs. And here's Daniel and I, in this process of teamwork, engaging with her. We decided how we would deal with it, and then we did that for a while, and then we had to change, and it was just so through that process I'm noticing, wow, what I really noticed was the first week that Sia was born, Daniel wasn't here. He was gone, and he was in his own process about becoming a father. So I was returning to that week, and and healing, basically. It was like I had created this, it's just me and you, baby, we're together, and kind of like locked everybody out into this blissful love bond, which feels great, but you're locking everybody out, right? So I went back to that in the moment when she's screaming at nighttime. I revisited these things within myself and allowed the locking out to shift and the bliss of our connection to be able to permeate the environment and allow other people in.
Wow.
So that's a practical example.
That's brilliant to have brought that practical. Yes, thank you. Really brilliant, because it can be easy, I think, when somebody listens to this or watches this and hears what you say, and it's just so powerful and true and eloquent and inspiring, and think, wow, well, it's easy because she's got it figured out. But
yeah,
it's really good to hear that you're dealing with those real, everyday, really challenging situations.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, bless you, my God.
Last night was much better, by the way. And then, that's what happens when you do the healing work, then the transformations come in. So, yeah.
Amazing. Do you have any parting wisdom? I think this is we've come to an end. Is there any parting wisdom you would have for women in particularly on the awakening path and kind of curious about their meditation practice?
I think I would just reiterate again, acceptance, and really giving a chance for ourselves to explore what that is in each moment and various levels of it, just feeling into what is happening now and what is it like to accept me now, I feel like that's a really good place to start, especially for women, because men too are also hard on themselves, but I think we have a lot of inner judgment, and a lot of don't feel that thing, or here's what's happening now. No, so going into acceptance really helps to unravel that. And once that's unraveled, just that simple thing, everything starts to flow much more easily.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful simplicity.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Thessa.
Gosh, I'm really happy to talk with you. So thank you for inviting me and allowing me to share.
I'm sure a lot of people will want to connect with you. Your website is thessasophia.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or heartbecoming.com. They go to the same place.
Okay. Great.
And I'm active on Facebook. Really, that's probably my most active writing place. So.
All right. Brilliant. So I'm sure who needs to will find you. And just thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
So I'm just going to end the recording.